turning up, waiting and asking for school fees. And there's nothing you can tell them to understand that even the CDF itself has not been disbursed. Number one, we request that even as this motion continues, we must find a way to have the money disbursed to the constituencies as soon as possible, so as to mitigate the issues that are already going on around in the constituencies. Mr. Speaker, sir, I went to a village school, Nyangoma Boys Secondary School, PO Box 23 Bondo, sir. We never thought that one day that school will ever have a school bus. But through CDF, I went there again, and now Nyangoma enjoys a school bus. Mr. Speaker, CDF, apart from what is meant for, it should be opened up to also cater for more other things, apart from security or education and sport. And even what is allocated for sports is even not enough, because we have enough talent out there waiting to be exploited. And we know very well that through CDF, we will be able to make sure that this actually happens. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want this House to push for immediate release of CDF so that work in the constituencies can continue immediately. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Odiwar. Honorable Wangwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, allow me also to add my voice on this motion, and especially the motion coming at a time when we are doing pre-debate on this issue of NGCDF. Honorable Speaker, I happen to have been here in 2015 and saw the transition from the old CDF Act to the new NGCDF. Honorable Speaker, having seen that transition, I wish to make, and also having seen, Honorable Speaker, last Parliament, what we went through in terms of the BBI, I would wish, Honorable Speaker, to make this input into this motion so that the Honorable Mule and Honorable Kishimu can take cognizance of these issues and make amendments before publication so that, Honorable Speaker, we can have a very good document to save our very good fund. Honorable Speaker, my concern is once the bill is published, we will not be able to amend even a comma. That being the case, Honorable Speaker, I wish to request that, Honorable Speaker, the 4 funds which are being proposed in this bill should go in individually. Let them run individually, Honorable Speaker, so that, Honorable Speaker, should a ruling of fate befall any of the bills, Honorable Speaker, let it be an issue of exclusiveness rather than, Honorable Speaker, the whole baby being killed alive. Honorable Speaker, that coming from what happened with the BBI, whereby, Honorable Speaker, a few clauses made us to lose the entire document. That, Honorable Speaker, should not be the case. CDF being the backbone, Honorable Speaker, of devolution, we build devolution after CDF, Honorable Speaker, and when you go to the ground and walk around my constituency, for example, Honorable Speaker, last weekend I had the privilege of giving out a very nice school bus to one of the schools in my constituency, Honorable Speaker. The enthusiasm, the happiness, the joy that was with the students and teachers is enormous. And, Honorable Speaker, if you kill the CDF as it is today, it will be a very big blow to the administration of the day, and we don't want an administration, Honorable Speaker, to suffer fate which is not theirs. We are happy the President has really thrown the weight behind the bill and is suggesting that we have a very good bill so that we have a good document to support the governance of his administration. Honorable Speaker, CDF is what is visible across the country. Wherever you go, is it a bridge? Is it a rough road? Is it, Honorable Speaker, a school? It's all built by CDF. When you look around and see what the counties have done, yes, they've tried. They've done it well, but they've not done it to the level of CDF. It is my prayer, Honorable Speaker, that we really put down a document that is going to support and make it for posterity, Honorable Speaker. On the issue of the Economic Stimulus Fund, Honorable Speaker, it is my wish and my prayer that we exclude it from the main document, Honorable Speaker. The PFM Act is alive. It gives the CS National Treasury powers to create a fund, to operationalize a fund of such a magnitude, Honorable Speaker. It is important that we allow the PFM Act to prevail. We allow the CS National Treasury to do that function rather than anchoring that function into the Constitution, Honorable Speaker. Otherwise, the three funds, Honorable Speaker, whereas they are good, I would wish that we separate the documents, let them run separately rather than being in one document. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I wish to support.
The Honorable Joseph Samal. The Honorable Joseph Samal. Is he in the House? Where?
Mr. Speaker, I had spoken about national government CDF, but...
You've already spoken, that's
yes,
okay?
I spoke.
I'll give the floor to the Honorable Mboko Milemba. Have you spoken? Continue. I'll give you. Okay. Give the mic to the Honorable Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute
Honorable
on this
members,
bill.
those of you who have already
The
spoken
CDF
on this, order, Honorable Milemba, if you have already spoken on this matter, you are advised to log out so that you do not crowd the screen unnecessarily.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, before the CDF, National Government CDF, was introduced, there were several attempts to try and make sure that funds were devolved from the central government to down the bottom at the village level. Such efforts were done by the former President Moi, and they included things like municipal councils and other items like district focus for rural development. The district focus for rural development did not optimize or get much out of this because it did not have a structure of operation. But we want to thank the then government of Mwai Kibaki under the Honorable who finally introduced CDF. And this was the first fund in this country to actually devolve funds down to the village and to the constituency and even to the location level. And since then, this is a fund that went ahead to also prompt Kenyans when they were making the 2010 constitution to realize that it was very important to devolve funds, because for the longest time, this country operated using the sessional paper number 10 of 1965, which was authored by one Tomboya, and which preferred that areas that had some development be strengthened, while those areas that did not have much development would remain behind. It was hoped that the areas which had attained some form of development would later on, using the multiplier effect, pull up the other areas that were down. So since then, Honorable Speaker, the fund has really served, and I will not dare to repeat what everybody has said about the importance of CDF. As we make this law, Honorable Speaker, I would wish to advise that there are certain areas which we have always spoken to in this House and which somewhat are not implemented. For instance, every House, I remember the 12th Parliament when we came in, we talked about the need to remunerate the village elders. I saw the same motion here recently, and it has gone like that. I also saw another area of school feeding program. This area was also talked about during the 12th Parliament when we were beginning, and equally, this time we have seen the motion come and go. What the recent members or the new members of Parliament may not realize is that these are motions which we always speak about, but we do nothing about them, because we end up saying that we are urging the respective ministries and departments to take action. And urging has proved to be nothing. Honorable Speaker, I want to propose that this input be put in this particular bill, that whereas most of the monies has been allocated for development projects, we create a bigger percentage, of course, while accepting that we need to increase the percentage of that CDF from 2% to 5%. but we create a bigger percent where we can use recurrent expenditure. Honorable members, if we opened a bigger percent for recurrent expenditure, we can allocate ourselves some functions, and I'll speak about two only, which are in their need in our constituencies. One such area are the village elders. Suppose in the 5% we are receiving, we actually clause there that each constituency be able to put down and pen down a certain agreed upon ratio of amount that will be paid to the village elder. We shall have completely and for once solved the question of village elders earning no stipend completely as they work. So I'm getting a solution, Honorable Speaker, to the issues or the question of the village elder working and not getting any pay. Another area I would want inputted in this would then be the area of feeding program to our students. Currently, as we know, most of our learners are in school, and there's hunger in the whole country, and people are suffering. There's drought and so on and so forth. So again, within the CDF, as we add this money from 2% to 5%, we could create an area to allow us to actually spend this money on recurrent, so that we are actually having a portion for every constituency, which specifically goes to the issue of feeding program of the students in the schools. We shall have helped this country by making sure that all students who are going to school will be having lunch in their schools, and therefore equalize the issue of feeding and the issue of education to all the learners. Honorable Speaker, the CDF's role in our development cannot be stumbled upon, and we are asking those who are in charge of this particular motion to actually go wide and talk to all the authorities. Currently, we are having a challenge with the Senate. The Senate is saying that they were not consulted. But I think a good idea doesn't need to be opposed by the Senate for the sake of it. They are simply opposing this idea because they are saying we did not consult them. But if this idea is good, I'm asking the senators of this country that you cannot block a good idea simply because of a consultation. We are here and available. Honorable Speaker, you are also available. Let the Senate consult you. Let the proponents of this bill equally consult the Senate leadership, so that when we go to the field, when we do break, we don't have counter voices that when we are speaking about CDF being entrenched in the Constitution, the senators are saying otherwise, that they need to be consulted before this is done. We also support, I particularly support the fund created for the senators and equally for the NGAF. But finally, Honorable Speaker, there's that special fund for those who are living with disabilities. Honorable Speaker, as I speak here today, it's unfortunate that the National Council of People Living with Disabilities have decided to change the cards from the old ones to the new ones. Unfortunately, as the people living with disabilities, including the students who are in the special schools, are being asked, Honorable Speaker, to pay between 600 and 1,000 shillings for them to get the new cards. I think this is not something good, because already these students in special schools and people living with disability have no money. They are having a disability, and you want to surcharge them 600 to 1,000 shillings for them to get a card. So my proposal for this particular law is that that fund for PWDs and people living with special needs be enhanced, and specifically the enhancement go to students who are in special schools, so that they are actually accommodated, they are actually given all the foods when they are in the special schools, and all their total care for education is taken care of. That should be ring-fenced so that those students can actually also learn just the same way other students are learning. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, let me say, CDF has been very great. In the Muhaya constituency, we have been able to do so much that I can't mention. And currently, apart from having a TTC that we created using the CDF, which the government has now adopted, everything else has been done by CDF in the absence of county governments. And I want to look forward that this bill will go through to support the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, over the weekend I was attending one of the most precious meetings we do attend, and unfortunately everyone is crying about school fees. This law should go through very quickly so that the people of Emuhaya, the people of Kenya, and the parents of this country can get school fees for their children. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to contribute, and I support.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Lilian Kogo.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you for giving me this chance to speak to the matter on the floor of the House. I've not been able to speak this 13th Parliament since I got back, and that calls for me to first congratulate you on your being elected the Speaker of National Assembly. Congratulations, Papa. And together with your able team, together with the Honorable Gladys Boss, and all the team, we have also a new clerk, and I think Bunge is headed in the right direction. And I also want to thank the people of Rangwe, Honorable Speaker. Rangwe is a great constituency that took the pains of electing a woman in 2017. But as if that is not enough, they broke the history of not having members go for second straight terms by re-electing me again to Parliament. I want to thank the great people of Rangwe constituency and make a very good promise that on the platform that I was elected on good performance and working for the people, I'm going to put a lot of effort to work for the great people of Rangwe constituency in a better manner and give better services in this second term. Honorable Speaker, on the matter that is on the floor of the House that expects to make amendments to the Constitution, and where it touches on the NGCDF, many of my colleagues have spoken to this, but I must add my voice to it because CDF is a single most fund, Honorable Speaker, that can be touched and felt by wananchi at the ground. CDF, Honorable Speaker, is a fund that works beyond borders, beyond boundaries. And it was even improved to the extent that there is equity in its distribution. Constituencies that have bigger wards, that are bigger with more wards, are expected to get slightly more than smaller constituencies. But allow me to speak, Honorable Speaker, to what I have seen CDF do in Rangwe constituency. CDF is one single most fund that elevates infrastructure, education infrastructure in our schools, and it is also structured to help with security matters. We have used CDF, Honorable Speaker, in a single most term to buy 14 school buses. Buses that could not have been able to be bought by schools that are attended by poor pupils whose parents do menial jobs in the sub-county. CDF, Honorable Speaker, is well structured in its nature to the extent that the MP literally has no role and only does oversight, which is the main component of the work of a member of parliament. So if CDF works well, Honorable Speaker, then it means that members of parliament are doing a good job in their oversight work. So I want to support this, Honorable Speaker, and I want to say that we even need to increase it. We need to increase the figures, Honorable Speaker, because there is so much and the fund is limited. We have so many things that happen through CDF in the maintenance of roads that go to our schools, in the construction of classrooms, laboratories, in the construction of dormitories. And when these things happen and the members of the public, Honorable Speaker, see the changes that can be done through CDF and also in building leaders, and they can compare how a leader who was there at their tenure and a consequent leader, how they have worked. It is a very good way. CDF and its oversighting by members of parliament is a very, very good way also of gauging the work of members of parliament. We need to empower our people, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when CDF and these other funds, we have the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, and then we also have other funds that come directly from national government to the grassroots. Honorable Speaker, this is one way that makes the government, other than the devolved functions, makes the government reach its people directly. So CDF should be enhanced, Honorable Speaker, as part of my contribution. Honorable Speaker, we need even to have a higher value that should be allocated for the bursary systems. Many of our poor families, many of our poor children who are not able to raise school fees, who are not able to fund their education, get funded through the bursaries that we get from CDF, Honorable Speaker. So I rise to support, and I say that it is important that the government takes enough effort to support this matter so that we constitutionalize CDF, so that people stop meddling thinking that CDF gives MPs weight. Members of Parliament, members of National Assembly have literally nothing to do with CDF. They just do their oversight role. There are structures that are there to govern and to manage this fund, and the fund has been used effectively. For the first time, Honorable Speaker, in the history of Rangwe constituency, we are able to have a sub-county headquarters that is modern, it is under construction, it is an ongoing work, and if it were not for availability of this CDF, then you would not know that you have reached Rangwe. But Honorable Speaker, in the next 3 months or so, we should have been able to finish a multi-million project through CDF. And that notwithstanding, we also do security lighting. We improve our communities. For any place where there is a government institution or otherwise, we have what we call corporate social responsibility. If there is a school, other than providing education, Honorable Speaker, a school should be able to help the community. And with the buses that we bought in Rangwe constituency, these buses, when they are given out, if they are not given for functions for school, the local community are able to use them, sir, at a very minimal subsistence just to fuel the buses so that they feel the benefit of having those schools around them. So I support the matter, and I congratulate you and your team, and I hope that this passes so that people stop interfering with CDF. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Starehe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this motion on the amendment of the Constitution for the NGCDF fund. First and foremost, where I come from in Nairobi County, Starehe constituency, most of my populace dwell in the slums, and these people have benefited from CDF through bursaries all over their lives. Saying that you want to scrap off CDF as of now will be detrimental to the gains that have been made by CDF in my constituency. Children from the slums of Mukuru Kayaba, children from the slums of Marigoini, and children from the slums of Watanyayo, among many other slums, have gone to school courtesy of CDF. And the way CDF fund hangs in the balance, we are in a chaotic situation in my constituency because people are despairing by day, asking me about when is the bursary going to come back, because as we look into the first term, which is going to happen from January next year, parents in those slums are in a panic mode. Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand to support this motion for the constitutionalization of the CDF so that once and for all, the CDF fund can be contained in the Constitution, and we'll never have to debate about CDF again. Among the gains made by the CDF fund in my constituency, we've had so many people talk of insecurity in these slum areas, but the NGCDF fund has been able to help bolster the security systems by constructing modern police stations, by being able to support the security system in our constituency in ways that we have been able to curb crime in these slum areas. The use of CDF in my constituency also has helped so many children who are not school going and who cannot afford school fees. They've been able to pay for their secondary school fees. And in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, sir, in my thinking, we would be having a discussion about bolstering the fund, not about scrapping the fund off, because of the functions of the CDF have been very effective in our constituencies. For example, we have these tertiary courses that are offered by the NGCDF, these soft skills that have been offered. You find, like in my constituency, we've been able to take some people to these small courses like the driving courses, tailoring courses, maybe baking courses, and other soft skills that these people have been able to gain through the CDF fund. So in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, sir, we'll be thinking of incorporating more activities for the NGCDF and expanding the fund to be able to help us address the issue of unemployment. If we are able, like my friend John Kerry has put up a motion seeking the NGCDF fund to cater for artists and artisans, to be able to equip our artists and artisans with skills, technology, tools, and machinery and capital. I think that would be a step in the right direction, in that these graduates of the NGCDF bursaries may be able to be empowered to gain skills, be empowered to make a living out of what they learned. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support the motion on the consolidation of the National Government Constitutional Development Fund, and I support the motion. Thank you so much.
Member of Parliament for Mosop constituency.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, allow me to thank you again for this opportunity that you've given me to support this bill on entrenching the funds of NGCDF on the Constitution. NGCDF, Madam Speaker, has truly played a major role in our country. The funds from this NGCDF has truly helped most of the families who are from humble backgrounds in terms of bursaries. It has helped so many schools to construct structures. Most of the places, especially Mosop, where I am from, most of the schools was constructed because of the funds from NGCDF. So by entrenching these funds in the Constitution, Your Honor, is going to really ensure that the development of this country continues uninterrupted. I want to believe that every member has a project in his or her constituency that actually was done through CDF. And I want to continue also to thank the government as well for continuing to increase the funding on NGCDF, because as of last Parliament, the NGCDF funds that was distributed to several constituencies was just exactly the same. But this present parliamentary term, they go as per the size of the ward of the constituency and the ward in that constituency. So I am supporting the NGCDF to be entrenched in the Constitution so that we will continue with the development in our areas. Also, I want to also support the Senate Oversight Fund. For a very long time, Senate has continued to do oversight without funds. And as such, it is very crucial to allow them and to give them funding to help them to continue with what they are supposed to be doing. NGAV also, National Government Affirmative Action, the funding that they've been receiving has also been limited. And as such, by entrenching in the Constitution, it will guarantee the development of this country, it will guarantee the development of our constituencies, and also no interruption. Like as we know as of now, as much as we believe that it's still, we will still be able to receive the national government CDF, but the Supreme Court had ruled unconstitutional. So by entrenching it, we will never have to deal with this issue again. The development will continue. The constituents, every time I'm home, Madam Speaker, are asking us, when are we going to receive our CDF? Because they've always budgeted, they've always believed the NCDF is one of the funds that actually can be seen, the development can be seen compared to other funds of the government. So I want to actually urge and continue to support the bill that that we continue with the NGCDF, but more so is to entrench it in the Constitution, that it will continue to support our country, to support our development, and we continue as a country. Thank you again, Madam Speaker. I support the motion.
Okay, my login has failed. Oh, there. Thank you. Member for Soy constituency.
Okay. Oh, Kumbai was there. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to say, from where I'm sitting and all the members, CDF is very important to the development of our constituencies, and I want to support the motion of entrenching CDF in our constitution. As we know very well, Madam Speaker, there have been various litigations. As a result, the CDF Act of 2013 was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, which was not in order. And for such issues to be resolved, the only way it can be resolved is by making sure that at least we entrench the CDF in our constitution, so that we can do away with all manner of litigations for those people who are anti-development. CDF has done a lot in Soy constituency. We have been able to achieve in development of our schools, in development of, in making sure that bursaries are available, in making sure that our schools have buses, and is sorting so many issues that is affecting our population. So what I want to say is that, Madam Speaker, as we look at entrenching the CDF in our constitution, it is very important that we know very well the schools will be opening in January. I want to call upon the CDF, the NGCDF committee to move with speed, to make sure that the committees are in place, to make sure that the allocations to the various constituencies have been approved, and also to make sure that at least before we break for our recess, the money for CDF that is due has been approved and be sent to our constituencies, so that we can sort the issues of bursaries. And I'm also calling upon this House to also look at the oversight role the Senate is playing. I know there have been various issues affecting the Senate. They have been requesting for the oversight funds, and this House has not approved. Let us make a difference by making sure that we also consider the Senate and approve the oversight funds. And as we approve the oversight funds for the Senate, it is also important that we look at ourselves as MPs for the National Assembly, and we make sure that at least also we have an oversight fund, so that all of us who are doing oversight can have the oversight funds. With those few remarks, I want to say I support the motion. Thank you.
Mike, please. Member for Laikipia East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I also start to support this very noble idea. And I happen to have served this House when we do not have the privilege to have CDF. And Madam Speaker, I can assure this House that members were really frustrated. They were demoralized in doing their work because they had to rely on government, which was not really willing to support the people at the grassroots level. We fought for the bill, and it became law, and the subsequent parliaments that followed were able to enjoy this privilege. Today, as we speak, anytime Kenyans hear that an amendment to the Constitution, they are always up in arms. But as you can feel the crowd today, very little resistance is there when people hear that CDF need to be anchored in the Constitution. Why is it so, Madam Speaker? It is because Kenyans have directly enjoyed and benefited from CDF. It is the only fund that a Kenyan can access so easily because they only need to access their member of parliament who are always available for them. This fund touches the most needed people in our constituencies and the country at large. Today, as we speak, members of parliament are facing a very rough situation on the ground where Kenyans are so worried that this fund might be abolished. And if you ask them today, they're asking not whether it will be scrapped, but when are they going to be able to benefit from the monies that come to the constituencies. The country is already facing very severe times, hunger situation in the country, the drought situation, and most of our students are already sent home because they cannot afford, their parents cannot afford to pay for school fees. And therefore, it is incumbent of this House to ensure that we anchor this law so that once and for all, the decisions can be made without fear that our people can be able to enjoy this fund, whereby it is already well defined. It is touching on education and more of security. You know, the only best gift that you can give to your children is education. A very huge number of Kenyans cannot afford to educate their children. And therefore, as we speak, if you look at the lines that are coming up, the request that we have today for people who require bursary, and again, remembering although education is free in this country, the issue of feeding program has become a nightmare, whereby 4,000 shillings that is required for every term in day schools is already a disaster. Our parents cannot afford to pay. The feeding program itself is not available for our students, and therefore it is important, Madam Speaker, to ensure that the parameters that we are putting in, we are not only discussing of this fund, but even whether we can make additional funds to support this program. The dignity of our people and the dignity of members of parliament, these two must also be protected. I remember when we could not be able to support our own people who came lining up each and every day in our houses, requiring us to support them through medical fund, which today we can be able to support them through CDF because we can afford to pay NHIF cards for them. On special needs, Madam Speaker, you look at the society and the very needy ones who can even go to tertiary education, those we can pay, for example, assisting our border riders, issuing them with licenses, whereby these licenses could not have been accessed and they were harassed each and every day. We are supporting Kenya Kwanza government, which approach is bottom up. The only fund that can be able to get to our people and help this government implement bottom up strategy is CDF. Because at the end of the day, the funds have been with the people. The funds can be able to be accessed. And at the same time, Madam Speaker, if you look at the beneficiaries of this fund, you'll be able to say that it is really touching on our people. Lastly, Madam Speaker, it is good for us to remember where we are coming from, be able to remember those people who initiated this program, the likes of Virginia Karoe. And also, we know we have a president like Mwai Kibaki who is also supporting this program. And we are very sure that with our president, Dr. William Ruto, we will be able to support this program and our people will benefit and they will be able to finance their people and ensure their well-being is taken care of. I support, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Laikipia East. I now call upon Member for Gilgil Town.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise to support the discussions that we are having on this very important legislative proposal. And I want to, first of all, congratulate Honorable Mule and Honorable Githinji, because this is the closest we have come to actually addressing the issues that we have had with CDF, that we have had with GAF. Instead of complaining out there, Madam Speaker, instead of paying a lot of fees to lawyers to go to court, I think we are now using this floor appropriately, that we deal with this matter once and for all, that we entrench it in the law, we put it in the Constitution, so that this debate of whoever is sitting on the chair of either the legislation, of either the executive or even the judiciary does not have the power to actually take it away from the people. And Madam Speaker, I think, as my colleagues have said, if you go around the country, in many places, especially the rural constituencies, Madam Speaker, you will realize the only visible fund that can be seen on the ground is actually CDF, that we have enough things that we can stand up and say. Madam Speaker, it is the third generation of county governments, and you cannot compare the work that CDF has done in the last few years, Madam Speaker, with what and the billions that have gone to the county governments, Madam Speaker. So I want to support this idea, and I also want to laud this House, because under the standing orders this time, Standing Order 114, we now have a window to actually ventilate. And this is also a form of public participation, Madam Speaker, that when you have a legislative proposal, you can bring it to the floor. The Speaker allows that we comment on it, because the nature and the law that governs the issue of constitutional bills means that you cannot amend even a comma or a full stop, Madam Speaker, when it comes to the floor. What that does, Madam Speaker, is that we will talk to it, and at the end of the day, it passes the way it is, or you lose it altogether. So this window, Madam Speaker, not only gives the issues to the public, it also serves as public participation, but more importantly, it helps to actually enrich the law. And the drafters, I'm sure they are taking their notes, Madam Speaker, that even after this session of this debate, we'll be able to get a full printout of this ventilation by members, so that as you craft that law, they come up with the best that it can get, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is through CDF that secondary schools that we have built, like the 35 that are in my constituency, Madam Speaker, have administration blocks, have laboratories, can compete even with Sarehe, can compete with other areas, Madam Speaker, schools that never thought in their lifetime they could even have such infrastructure, Madam Speaker. Primary schools that have been neglected for a long time, Madam Speaker. Today, if you go to a school called Kapkures in my constituency, Madam Speaker, that had a mud-walled administration block. If you go to schools that had mud classrooms, like Meli Primary School, Madam Speaker, these schools now have gotten a facelift and have gotten dignity courtesy of CDF. Madam Speaker, teachers have had terrible working conditions, Madam Speaker, from toilets, from classrooms, from offices, Madam Speaker. We have had classrooms sharing two classes, Madam Speaker. You find one class is facing one side and the other one, grade 2, is facing the other side, and it is actually a chaotic scene, Madam Speaker. But through CDF, we have been able to ensure that we have put these standards to be akin to even academies and private schools, Madam Speaker. That meaning that we have been able to equalize every child, regardless of whether you're going to a public school, regardless of whether you're going to an academy, Madam Speaker, you are able to get the same standards and almost similar infrastructure, Madam Speaker, courtesy of CDF. Madam Speaker, courtesy of CDF, we have so many people who have been actually direct beneficiaries, from employees, from the committees that are constituted in the constituencies, Madam Speaker, from the people who work in the constituency CDF offices, Madam Speaker. All these people are dependent on this CDF, Madam Speaker. And what this CDF has done, Madam Speaker, is actually set the pace of how other funds should be administrated. What do I mean by that, Madam Speaker? CDF has set the threshold of how much money should go to bursaries, what percentage should go to construction, what percentage should go to sports, what percentage should go to environment. Madam Speaker, the law is actually very clear on how that is done. I don't think there is any other law, Madam Speaker, that has such clear guidelines on how administration of the fund should be done, Madam Speaker. And this is actually what the county government should borrow and import, Madam Speaker, so that you don't end up spending 80% to pay workers, some of whom have actually been shown by audit to be ghost workers and spend a very small percentage to development, Madam Speaker. But the push and shove with CDF, Madam Speaker, has had many enemies. Right from people who feel like the CDF fund has made them look bad because they're not delivering. And that way, we have had very many sponsored cases back and forth from the judiciary. And we have had a long time and a long battle with that, Madam Speaker. So this law will actually put that to rest and will be able now to deal with issues as they come. Madam Speaker, the issue of the National Government Affirmative Fund, Madam Speaker. I know from the 11th Parliament where I sat, the 12th Parliament where I sat, this fund was actually a fight between members representing single-member constituencies, as it felt like it's a competition. But, Madam Speaker, what the affirmative seats have done, including the women rep position, and the nominated position, is incubate leaders that today we can have the governor of Meru, who was a women rep, being a woman, that today I stand here having benefited from a nomination, Madam Speaker, that today we have the governor of Homa Bay, who was once a women rep, Madam Speaker, that today we have the Honorable Mishimboko, who was once a women rep, we have the Honorable Rueda from Lamu, who was a women rep. Madam Speaker, it has become a fertile incubation grounds to get members to run for other seats and to be able to compete outside there, Madam Speaker. But they have had a challenge, because when you're talking 100 million for CDF, you're talking 7 million for a constituency, Madam Speaker, and you're talking billions from the county government, and these women have had a hard time to actually keep up and be able to deliver in their mandate. So putting this in law, Madam Speaker, then, it will be able to give more women the power and be able to run and give them the mandate and give them the power and the push they need to be able to run. And Madam Speaker, what that would mean is that more and more people and more women will be going to be governors from women rep position, will be going to be single member constituencies from women rep position, will be going to be senators, will be going to be deputy governors from the women rep position, Madam Speaker. And what I have learned, Madam Speaker, over the time, the last 3 parliaments, is that we have gone a full cycle, Madam Speaker. We have had people here who sat in 11th Parliament. When I sat in the Senate, they sat in the National Assembly, and they bashed the Senate. But in the 12th Assembly, Madam Speaker, they ended up being senators, and others who are senators like ourselves, Honorable Elachi, Honorable Ngera, we ended up in this house in the National Assembly. So what I hope is that we can look at this legislation for posterity, that it is not a personal issue, Madam Speaker. Today, even the Speaker of the National Assembly was a senator. I mean, we have governors who are senators. We have senators now who are governors. We have people who have served in the executive. We have people who have served in the judiciary like yourself and are now in this house, Madam Speaker. So I hope that we can look at it from that posterity, that we are not making the law for ourselves, but for years to come, Madam Speaker. That said, I hope that we can look at the constitutional issues, that these issues do not hamper the implementation of this law, Madam Speaker. We hope that we get the drafters of this law getting to pick the issues. I personally like the idea that we should also look at the idea of separating the funds, Madam Speaker, because one may have an issue with one and go to court and get it to be shot down as an unconstitutional and also affect the other. So I hope that the legal and our legal teams will be able to look at the best way to actually get these houses to work together. And I hope that we can also learn from experience, and that we are having the 3rd generation county governments, Madam Speaker, that we have gone all around it, that we'll be able to ensure that all of us, the Senate, the National Assembly, are at the same table and are doing this to be able to achieve the same goal. Madam Speaker, that said, I hope that we can be able to fast track this legislation, that we get it to the Senate and the Senate also passes it, Madam Speaker, so that the issues we are grappling with right now, I mean, if a girl does not do her KCSE right now or her KCPE, Madam Speaker, because they have been sponsored by CDF, within a year, that girl is a parent, whether a baby or not. So, Madam Speaker, I hope that this law can be fast-tracked so that we get to the end of it. With that, I support.
Thank you, Member for Gilgil. I now call upon Member for Kipkelion East. Okay. I now call upon Member for Kangema.
Madam Speaker.
Oh, you're there?
I had actually participated in this. I'm waiting for the next.
Okay, then you can. All right, kindly, honorable members, if you have spoken, if you could kindly remove your cards so that others can have an opportunity. Kindly remove your cards. I can see member for Chesume had spoken and his name is, he's got his card there, so if we can remove our cards. Okay, I'll now go to member for Kibwezi West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You can go next.
Join the rest of our colleagues in supporting the amendment by the Honorable Mole and the Honorable Gishimo to entrench the CDF, to also entrench the GAF, and to also create the Senate Oversight Fund through a constitutional amendment. Mr. Speaker, I think there is no gainsaying as to the work that CDF has done in this country. Members here have eloquently enumerated the several projects that have been done by CDF. As a first-time member of parliament, I have perused the records in my constituency. And one of the key things that touch our heart, touch the heart of women and our children, is that I've realized in every year, my predecessors were funding over 5,000 kids in secondary schools and over 2,000 kids through their university education. Today, Madam Speaker, as we debate here, many of those children who are benefiting from CDF, some of them are now not going to school because CDF has not been disbursed. Having said that, Madam Speaker, therefore, it is only prudent as a representative of the people of Kibwezi that we support CDF being entrenched in the Constitution so that the legal issues that have been bedeviling the fund can be dealt with once and for all. Madam Speaker, number two, I have also been following the legal battles that the CDF has gone through, from the High Court through the Court of Appeal, and recently the pronouncement at the Supreme Court. I think it has been clarified, Madam Speaker, that the decision of the Supreme Court did not affect the National Government CDF Act of 2015, but rather the predecessor of 203. And therefore, we wish to urge the board to move with speed now that the committees have begun to be being tabled in this house, to move with speed to disburse the fund, because the act that creates the fund currently is not annulled, as it were. But even as we say so, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, sorry, as we construe the law and the Constitution, I think we also need to take care as judges, as members of parliament, as ordinary citizens, that we do not elevate technicalities above the public good. That even as we look at CDF, we cannot look at CDF as a fund for a member of parliament. We have to look at CDF as a fund of the people, as a public interest fund. And when we are saying CDF is illegal, we must also exercise our mind as to what will happen to the thousands and thousands of poor children who go to school through that particular fund. I know, and without appearing to disparage the judiciary, that they know of children even within their own localities whose fees is paid through CDF. And therefore, by continuously looking at technicalities, the small issues, as it were, and ignoring public good, they are actually making the poor children to never access an important commodity known as education. Madam Speaker, we are looking at a constitutional amendment, and the threshold is quite high. Mr. Speaker, needs to be put as to what is an oversight fund as against CDF. In my understanding, CDF is a developmental fund. Developmental fund, it is not a fund for the member of parliament. It is a developmental fund that funds classrooms, that funds security, that funds bursaries. The oversight fund that is contemplated in this amendment is a fund to facilitate the senator to move around the county. And Madam Speaker, I was computing. I am not very good in mathematics. I am good, but I am not as good. But the percentage that has been provided in the amendment, looking at the last audited accounts, translates to about 200 million or thereabout shillings per annum. And Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, if you divide the 200 million with 47 counties, you realize that each county will get between 4 and 5 million. This is money for a senator to fuel their car, to move around the county, to see whether a project that the county government claims to have been done has actually been done. This is a fund for the senator to facilitate research on oversight of the devolved funds. And so, Madam Speaker, even as our colleagues in the Senate say that they require more funds, I wish to refer them that CDF also started from long before. I remember in my constituency in the year 2003, after President Mwai Kibaki took over the reins of power, and our member of parliament then was Richard Kalembe Ndile, may God rest his soul in eternal peace. We only got about 6 million shillings. That was the first disbursement. And therefore, we need to start from somewhere. And we need to distinguish that the money that the senators are going to be given is not money that is going to fund development. They are not going to be asked to build classrooms. They are not going to be asked to build police lines. They are not going to be asked to do bursaries. It is money to facilitate the office of the senator to undertake oversight. And therefore, in my view, we are beginning at a good place, and members of the public need to be advised properly so that we do not politic and lose such a progressive amendment. Madam Speaker, as I conclude, I wish to congratulate the member for Matungulu, also to congratulate the member for Gishugu, the Honorable Gishimu, for this well-thought-out amendment, for this very timely amendment, and to also pay tribute to the initiators, the original initiators of the idea of a constituency development fund, like has been said before, the Honorable Engineer Murwe Kariuki, and the third President of the Republic of Kenya, the Honorable Mwai Kibaki, because if it did not start then, we could not be where we are. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I support the entrenchment when the time comes so that the issues of legality of CDF do not bedevil us anymore, because in my understanding, a constitutional provision cannot be declared unconstitutional. I therefore beg to support and will be to urge members to avail themselves in the House at the critical hour to make the voting to meet the threshold. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I now call upon member for Kisii County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support the motion because CDF, as some perceive to be a loophole to put money in some individual pockets, there are so many people, Madam Speaker, including Donya, who is standing here from Kisii County, who has benefited from CDF bursaries. In fact, so many families can applaud CDF because it has paid bursaries to their needy children at various learning institutions. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, CDF has done a great control on the imbalances in regional development, which had been previously brought about by partisan politics. Talking about fighting poverty as leaders, what does the president even promise its people? He says, my government will protect, my government will provide. Then this is through CDF, the government is releasing resources to the vulnerable groups, to the grassroots. In fact, anyone fighting CDF should be seen as an enemy of fighting development. Let me say, for example, when you move around, you will see classes built by CDF. you will see projects funded by CDF. I stand to ask, what if this CDF was dealt away with? As per today, we should be discussing on how can we increase more resources to CDF so that we can even see our CDF issuing through the members of parliament and even through the women reps, sanitary pads to our young girls, some who cannot attend classes because they lack so. On top of it, even CDF should be added to provide school feeding programs to our school-going children, because there are some students who stay at school for the whole day without going for food because there is none that they can get at their homes. So members of this hallowed house, we should be trusted and not be treated as suspects. When you meet some few people out there who don't understand what it entails for the government to release these resources, they are saying that that is money meant for MPs as their pocket cash. Honestly, it has never been a pocket cash for a member of parliament who has its people in his or her thoughts, minding on how, like now January is around the corner. This time, there are students who are calling us, they are saying, help us so that we can clear our fee balances to enable us sit for the exam. So I arise to support that CDF is a rich thing for our constituents, and CDF is not a loophole for politicians to have petty cash, and CDF is very good and very good for our people. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Kisii. I now call upon Member for Kangema.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. Mine is to support the amendment to the Constitution, and first of all, congratulate Honorable Mule and also Honorable Geshimo, who came up with the idea on the amendment on the area on the Constitution. Madam Speaker, CDF has been a fad that every person, every child, and everyone in Kenya understands how it has been utilized and how it has been very helpful to the Kenyan people. I remember when I was in school, most of the activities of infrastructures in school were done by our parents, whereby you could find them even coming personally so that they don't have money, so that they can join hands. Instead of contribution, personally, they used to work in the construction site so that they can be able to keep their children in school. Madam Speaker, that has been normal. The responsibility now for our parent is paying for school fees. And also, the CDF now has gone further, is taking up the issue of payment of school fees for children, mostly tuition. It has taken up mostly for day schools. Madam Speaker, a child who is schooling on a day school, and our day school which are doing very well, can be able to be sponsored by CDF 100%, because the amount now is amount that a CDF can be able to afford. One thing I want to say is that the civil societies and those who has been going mostly to challenge the CDF fund, their intention is not for the Kenyans. Their motive is not to improve or to be able to assist our Kenyan people. Mostly is recognition, and maybe they think maybe by chance they may be caught and maybe may be talked about so that they can drop the issue. Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate our members who thought that the best thing we can do now is to infringe it or to put it in the Constitution so that now we can put it down, and the charge of managing the civil societies is put to rest. Madam Speaker, as it is, the CDF Act 2015, NCDF Act 2015, as it is, there is no, the separation of power is very clear. Like for now, the majority leader today has read the list of the constituencies where the members of the board has been forwarded to NCDF. Those members, the advertisement were done by the DCC, who is now the devolved representative of the executive at the constituency level. Therefore, as it is, though we know that the challenge was on CDF Act 2013, I think the best thing for now is to put it in the Constitution so that we may put it at rest. But as the NCDF Act 2015, the clear separation of power is very clear, that the board is being chosen and advertised by the DCC, and the board is extremely independent. Our role as members is just as patron and also being representative of people in raising the issues that they require us to do. Therefore, as we are putting it, I want to support the motion, and also, I want to support the idea whereby we put our statement on the amendment. And Madam Speaker, I wish to call upon the members, we support the amendment so that we can be able to infringe it in the Constitution and so that we can be able to assist and support our people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Tigania West, and I hope you have not spoken.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to also add my voice to this motion on the constitutional amendment to bring in the CDF and other funds into the Constitution. Honourable Speaker, I thank God for this opportunity to have to discuss this issue. And I also thank the two Honourable members, Gishimo and Honourable Mule, who seized the moment to basically bring this motion up so that we may be able to discuss it and propose things that probably we believe are important to put in this Constitution. Honourable Speaker, it is important for the government to go the fund way, because going the fund way enables us to do development in a better and more organized manner. And therefore, I support the idea of having CDF, of having National Government constitute this development fund, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, the Senate Oversight Fund, and the Empowerment Fund, the Economic Stimulus and Empowerment Fund enshrined in the Constitution. Honourable Speaker, as I speak now, we have issues in many counties in this country. Some may not have come out as strongly and as violently as the major issues have been. Honourable Speaker, I feel that this motion is lacking in one dimension. All the members who are elected by the people deserve to go back to the people and report to them on development. There is no development that can be carried out without the participation of the members, and therefore it becomes a development that is owned fully by the people. I would like to propose that this constitutional amendment is further amended to include the World Fund. World Fund is one of the funds that is contentious in many wards today, because there is no clear description of the money that goes to the ward, to the constituents, to the counties, on what basically goes to the ward. It is not in the law, it is not in the Constitution, it is therefore illegal even to discuss the World Fund. And therefore I believe this motion could be amended to include the World Fund as well. I know this particular motion will also have to go to Senate. Senate have got their issues, even if we are including the Senate Oversight Fund. Senators have got an issue with the wards in their constituencies, and they basically support the MCAs in the oversight. It would also be good for us to declare a certain proportion of the money that goes to the counties as World Fund, purposely aimed at supporting development in specific wards. Honourable Speaker, guided funds are important in the sense that they also do development better. Looking at all these funds, they target specific areas. The scope is not in limit. We have various fronts that we need to do development in. There is water supply, there is security as enshrined in the as captured in CDF. There is also the issue of medical care. There are very many other issues that need to be looked into and therefore supported specifically. And therefore, these funds are not in vain. And I believe if we integrate the World Fund as well, it would basically come in to support some of the specific areas like CDF is so guided. Honourable Speaker, to be closely, it is important that once this is done, and I believe members will support this in large numbers, we would like it to be immediately followed by a guiding legislation and regulations so that it is as precisely guided as the CDF. We would like funds guided, and therefore these guidelines be exposed or be discussed by the people so that people know how much money should be going to what kind of activity on development endeavor. CDF is very specifically guided, and people know that 5% of CDF has got to go to bursaries. They know that about 6% goes to managing the office. They know about 6% again goes to the emergencies. And while at emergencies, Honorable Speaker, I want to point out one thing. CDF enables us to respond in real time when there is an emergency because the money is already there. If there was an emergency, like for instance, the roof of a building, of a classroom block has been blown off by the roof, and by wind. And then we have to go to the national government to look for money. The bureaucracies involved and the rigidities that we have, structural and otherwise, would not enable such an action to be taken as fast as it probably and deserving. Therefore, the response to emergencies is in real time, and those guidelines are very, very important. We therefore would like to emphasize that these funds, even though integrated in the Constitution, must be as precisely defined in terms of the functions they are going to undertake and in terms of the areas of focus in view of the development endeavors they are going to target. Honourable Speaker, it is important to note that we need to modernize our backgrounds. We need to modernize our areas in terms of development. Development is not just about bringing in new things. CDF has the flexibility to modernize schools, and this has helped us have better and new schools in most of the areas. It has helped us finish up schools that were left unfinished. It has helped us bring down the structures that are dangerous to the pupils and students, and therefore it is a very good fund. And I believe if it is integrated in the Constitution, as much as the other funds are also integrated in the Constitution, it would help us to even be better, focused and be sure that we are going to do the right thing when the time comes. Honourable Speaker, it is important for us to clear out the matters on CDF and NG-CDF at this point in time. NG-CDF is as per the 2015 legislation and the follow-up regulations of 2016. The CDF was 2013 legislation. What has gone to court, and I would like the Kenyans to know this because they're asking a lot of questions, what went to court is CDF 2013. The members of parliament, and even with a lot of consultations in view of public participation, and already realized there were problems in CDF, and therefore they went back to the House, this particular House, came up with a law that is called National Government Constituencies Development Fund, and this fund has clearly and precisely described what needs to be done. So it is no longer ambiguous. There are no areas that are unclear. There is nothing that is not transparent in CDF, and therefore the court issue does not necessarily focus on NG-CDF. It does talk about CDF, which this House had already done away with. Honourable Speaker, it is important for us to look at how do these funds target development and clear out struggles. The public participation initiated before investment is very key. People themselves come and say, this is what we would like to be done in our area. So during the planning session, although you could have a plan, which is in long-term or medium-term plan, you could always interpret this plan in terms of the people's specific needs. And once you give them to their needs, you supply them to their needs, the fund is precisely used, and it is much more appreciated than any money or any development that befalls our people without having been pre-announced. Honourable Speaker, CDF and many other funds that we are discussing today give people hope and more hope. I'm talking about more hope because today, what the greatest questions that we are answering as members of parliament is when shall we have the bursary? Because people have gone through a period of drought, there has been a lot of famine across the country, there is no money to take children to school, some of them are already doing their exams this year, and therefore they are asking, when shall we have the bursary? The bursary supports more than 70% of the children that go to school and supports them significantly. So very well tailored and very well targeted, this money can help a great deal. Therefore, putting it in the Constitution removes any form of doubt, guards this money against any form of intrusion, and helps us to plan far into the future. And we appreciate the fact that CDF is also focusing on the numbers, because when we were campaigning last time, we were talking about 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. So CDF should also focus on 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote, in the sense that What has already been instituted and what we saw at the beginning of this session of Parliament is that CDF will target the number of wands that we have. That if you have 5 wands, you can get a little bit more than one. Anybody who has 4, and any person who has got 6 wands will get more money. That means we are prorating development. We are trying to increase equity. So these funds, when they come in, there is need for us to also incorporate equity in the sense that whatever it is that is being done should target the people, because it is our people that we develop. It is not the area, it's not the expansiveness of an area, it is not anything else but the people. So, Honorable Speaker, I am happy that this has come in time, and I pray that members of this House will support this particular motion, and we shall amend the Constitution to integrate these funds as much as we are also going to include the Ward Fund. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Member for Jomvu constituency.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipatia fursa hii. Mimi pia Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kuungana na wenzangu kumpongeza Mheshimiwa Mule ambaye ni rafiki yangu, na vile vile Mheshimiwa Gishimu kwa kuja na marekebisho haya ya CDF. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sasa tunaona tunaelekea kwenye mwelekeo mzuri, kwa sababu kupitia hazina hii ya maeneo bunge kuwekwa kamili katika katiba yetu itaondoa ule msukosuko ambao ulikuwa kila mara tukipelekwa kotini kutoka wakati wa nyuma mpaka hivi karibuni. Mheshimiwa Spika, sasa itakuwa ni kisheria, na kama wanenaji wenzangu walivyosema, Mheshimiwa Spika, tusiyazungumze haya tu katika pale sehemu za maharusi ama za masherehe nje kule, lakini ikifika wakati wa kupigia kura kabisa marekebisho ya mswada huu, ni muhimu wajumbe wote tuko hapa bunge ili kuunga mkono jambo kama hili, kuona tumeweza kulipitisha. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi leo nazungumza nikiwa na furaha sana juu ya hizi hazina ya eneo bunge, kwa sababu eneo bunge langu mimi la Jomvu lilikatwa kuwa eneo bunge jipya kutoka mwaka 2013, ambapo wakati huo Mheshimiwa Spika, eneo bunge langu tulikuwa tukitaka huduma mpaka tuende kwenye eneo bunge la Changamwe. Ni kupitia wakati huo 2013 ambao eneo bunge hili liliundwa, na ambapo mimi nilibahatika kuwa ndio mjumbe wa kwanza kwenye eneo bunge hilo mpaka sasa kwa mara ya 3. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kuchukua fursa hii kumpongeza Commissioner Makau Kingola. Najua anataka kunambia yuko katika hatua ya kinidhamu, ilikuwa sikuweza kumtaja, lakini ni mheshimiwa rafiki yangu ambaye nataka kusema kuwa nampongeza kwa kuchaguliwa kama commissioner, na vile vile ni mtu ambaye nilifanya naye kazi kutoka mwaka 2013 nikiwa katika chama cha Wiper Democratic Movement. Vile vile nachukua fursa hii kumpongeza ndugu yangu Mohamed Ali, na vile vile ndugu yangu Mheshimiwa Amishi Mboko. Sasa leo Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kusema kuwa CDF ama pesa hizi za hazina ya eneo bunge ndizo ambazo zimeniwezesha kuweka makao makuu katika sehemu ya Jomvu, yani sub county headquarters, ambao zamani ilikuwa hakuna. Mheshimiwa Spika, leo ni hazina hii ya eneo bunge ambao imetuwezesha kujenga mashule kama vile Maganda Primary School, ambapo ni mahali ambako kulikuwa hakuna shule wakati wa nyuma. Sisi Mheshimiwa Spika, tulikuwa watoto wetu wakitoka Miritini wakienda mpaka Kwale County, mahali ambako kunaitwa Mwamdudu. Leo hii Mheshimiwa Spika, nimejenga shule hapo inayoitwa Maganda. Mheshimiwa, nimetengeneza shule mahali panapoitwa Kibarani, ambapo ni mahali palipokuwa panajulikana ni mahali hatari na hapawezi kupelekwa maendeleo katika sehemu hiyo. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna mahali ambapo sisi tunapakana na Rabai ambako kulikuwa hakuna shule ya upili. Leo nimeweka shule ya upili inayoitwa Miroroni. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi niko na wadi 3. Pesa hizi za eneo bunge zimeniwezesha kuweka polisi katika kila eneo katika wadi zangu zile. Vile vile namshukuru Mungu, kupitia pesa hizi ndio zilituwezesha kuweka ofisi za ma-ACCs na machifu wangu katika kila sublocation ama katika kila kata ya eneo langu. Mheshimiwa Spika, wengi wamezungumza hapa kuhusu watoto kusomeshwa. Na leo Mheshimiwa Spika, nasema mtoto wa kike na mtoto wa kiume ni wajibu kusomeshwa na ni wajibu kusoma. Leo nikisimama hapa Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nina furaha kubwa sana kwa ajili wewe ambaye ni spika wetu ulioko hapo, ndio ulimwepisha Rais Uhuru Kenyatta pale Kasarani ukiwa katika mahakama. Mimi na imani kuwa nafasi ile hungeweza kuwa registrar wakati ule kama si elimu yako ambayo imeweza kufikisha hapo. Leo Mheshimiwa Spika, tunakukumbuka wewe wakati ulipokuwa commissioner katika Electoral Commission. Hii na imani kuwa ni elimu yako ndio iliyokufikisha pale. Mheshimiwa Spika, leo wewe uko hapo kama spika ambaye unatuendeleshea bunge hili. Naamini ni elimu ambayo imeweza kufikisha hapo. Na niko na imani rais wa kwanza wa Kenya utakuwa wewe Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa vile elimu ile ambayo uko nayo. Leo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kusema pesa hizi za hazina ya maeneo bunge zimefanya mambo mengi. Leo mimi Mheshimiwa Spika, nikiangalia katika eneo la Pwani, mtoto aliyefanya mtihani mwaka jana, ambaye mtoto yule anatoka katika shule ya Amani Primary School, ndio alikuwa mtoto bora katika Coast Province yetu nzima, ama katika what can I call a province? Wilaya, not wilaya. Mkoa, katika mkoa mzima. Na msichana huyu ni kupitia CDF ambao tuliweka scholarship program, sisi tukampeleka mpaka kule Kisumu mahali alipopata shule. Mheshimiwa Spika, ilikuwa furaha kwa sababu mamake hakujua ilikuwa ataweza kumwendeleza msichana yule anaitwa Lisa Adhiambo elimu mahali gani ambapo atapata pesa kumpeleka. Lakini ni kupitia ofisi ya mjumbe Mheshimiwa Spika, ambapo tulimlipia fee ya mwaka mzima. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika kumtia motisha msichana yule, tukamkatia tikiti ya ndege kutoka Mombasa mpaka Kisumu. Kwa hivyo niko na imani hii ni njia moja ambayo tumeweza kubadilisha maisha ya watu wengi. Na katika kipengee hichi cha marekebisho kukiweka katika katiba, litatuondolea wale ambao shughuli yao ni kupinga kile linaloendelea katika bunge hili. Kwa hivyo kuna watu wengi ambao walitupeleka kotini kwa mara nyingi, kama mjumbe wa Tigania mwenzangu alivyozungumza pale hivi, na tukaweza kupambana wakati wa nyuma katika makoti. Leo hii Mheshimiwa Mule na Mheshimiwa Gishimu anaweka historia ya kwa kuwa leo tuwe bunge, kesho hata tukiwa tumestaafu katika ulimwengu ama ulingo wa siasa, wanaokuja hawataweza kusumbuliwa tena, kwa ajili hii pesa itakuwa iko katika katiba, na vile vile wataingia katika historia ya kwa kuwa wao ndio waliopigania, na sisi pia tutaingia katika historia kwa sisi pia tuliweza kuunga mkono kwa mambo kama haya. Leo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nazungumza kwa sababu eneo bunge langu la Jomvu, mambo mengi sana ambayo tumefanya ni kupitia na pesa hizi za hazina ya eneo bunge ya CDF. Katika kila wodi yangu tumeendeleza mambo kadha wa kadha, ambao leo mimi Mheshimiwa Spika nataka kusema walemavu kwa mara ya kwanza tumewakumbuka kwa kuwekea special classrooms katika Amani katika Kwashe Primary School na Miritini World Bank, ili pia wao wajihisi ni binadamu kama binadamu wengine. Pesa ni ya CDF ambao tumeweza kuwajengea hizo special classrooms. Kwa hivyo leo, Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kuunga mkono hoja hii ambayo Mheshimiwa Mule na Mheshimiwa Gishimo wameweza kuileta, na vile vile kusema kuwa ikifika wakati wa kuweza kupigia kura marekebisho haya, sote tuwe katika bunge hili ili kuona tumeweza kupitisha mambo haya. Kwa hayo, Mheshimiwa Spika, nachukua fursa hii kukushukuru kwa kunipatia nafasi ya kuchangia katika hoja hii. Asante sana.
Asante sana mbunge wa Jomvu. Asante kwa yale uliyasema, nitasema inshallah. Now I would like to call upon member for Kitui West. Member for Kitui West, you're out of order. You do not rise. If you want to make a point of order, just press the intervention button. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this discussion on anchoring the CDF and the other funds into our constitution. Let me, first of all, congratulate the two members who have come up with this discussion and say that they did the right thing, because CDF especially has transformed our country tremendously. If it were not for the CDF, we would not be where we are in our constituencies. And this makes Kenya actually look very beautiful, look like a country which has really been transformed as far as developments are concerned. This has tremendously also contributed to the education of our children. Because if you look at CDF, education is the only equalizer, because it will make a child from a poor family perform well and be able to even be considered among others who are coming from rich families. So entrenching this in the Constitution is very, very important, so that we stop the court cases every now and then. It is through the CDF where we came up with the day mixed schools. And these day mixed schools have really transformed education, because the pupils and also students who go to day mixed schools have the opportunity to even have education in secondary schools, a case which was not there before. There are some students who could not have afforded, parents who would not have afforded to go take their children to secondary school because of the huge amounts of school fees. And now, because of CDF, we are able to construct mixed day schools. We are able to also pay the little amount of fee which is expected to be paid for day mixed schools. And therefore, this has enabled very, very many students to actually have the opportunity to go to secondary schools, and not only secondary schools, to even access a university education, colleges, and what have you. So CDF has made education possible, therefore making our people be equal to each other. So parents no longer do arambes. And if actually this time in age, if they were to do arambes, it would be very costly, and it will not be possible to even have this education or these pupils educated, because the parents can no longer afford to do arambes and come up, build the schools. So I am standing up to actually support the discussion and say that apart from the programs which are done by CDF, as we amend, we can also bring amendments to also include school feeding programs. And this can also be anchored in the CDF. We can also include things like programs like Kazi Mtaani, and this would really help the youth who lack, who have not been employed, who have not been educated well. This would enrich the CDF because it is the only fund whereby you take the fund as a grant and you don't have to pay as though it's a loan. Other funds like WESO Fund, Women Enterprise Fund, Youth Funds, you take and then you have to pay back. But for CDF, it's actually free money, especially to our poor students, especially to our poor parents. And this has really helped in transforming and developing our country and also educating our pupils to ensure that they get the best and also get money which they don't have to pay back. Because if it was in terms of loans, then it would be very difficult to even repay this amount of money. If you look at help you also have to take and repay back. But with bursaries from CDF, this one is free and therefore makes it possible for pupils to be educated without having to pay back. And I would say that as I support the CDF, I would also support the other funds and say, especially for the CDF, right now we have a lot of problems. There is a lot of famine, especially in some of the counties. There are some 29 counties where there's a lot of famine. There are also areas there's a lot of famine. And if people cannot afford food, to buy food, surely what about education? That means it's very clear that most pupils are not now going to school. Most students are not going to school because they do not have the bursaries. Because in the schools I've talked about, the day mixed secondary schools, almost 90%, 80 to 90% is paid through, can be paid through bursaries. And this ensures that the pupils stay in school. But during this time of famine, when the parents cannot afford food, then they can also not afford to pay school fees. And therefore, I'm asking the government to release funds for CDF, because the CDF, which is in question, is the one for 2013, the one which was declared unconstitutional. But the NG CDF for 2015 is still constitutional. So immediately the boards, the committees are in place. I urge the government to release the money immediately so that the pupils do not continue to lose in their education, because that means they would perform poorly if they actually stay at home. I would also suggest that we increase the funds so that we can also increase the amount from bursary, and this will really help the parents. I'm also supporting the other funds, the GAF, and also the money for empowerment, for the oversight for the Senate. I'm also supporting those ones. But CDF is very crucial for our pupils, and the parents and everyone, every Kenyan is supporting this. So I support this, and I say that let's anchor this in the Constitution, and also try to amend where possible so that we don't always have to and fro cases in court. With that, Speaker, I support the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Kitui West. I now call upon Member for Dagoretti North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this motion, a motion that comes in at a time when many of our students across the country, many of our peoples across the country are wondering whether they will indeed see again national NGC CDF. And Madam Speaker, I want to just thank the Honorable Members Gishumo and Stephen Mule for co-sponsoring this to us. Madam Speaker, when you look at this country, one of the things I think we really neglected is to put in a clear policy on how schools and even primary schools, secondary schools will have their funding that government is able to support. But we also want to thank government for standing firm in ensuring it is within CDF that this development can be able to trickle down within the constituencies. Today, as we speak, Madam Speaker, we have our students who are about to just do exams, and I am imagining we need classrooms for those of year 6. We need classrooms, Madam Speaker, for those who are joining Form 1. Some schools need dining halls at the moment because they are wondering what is going to happen. And we are looking at a serious, where this House has to come very firm and to even one day adjourn and debate to understand how our children of grade 6 and those who are joining Form 1 are going to join either in high schools, or are we going to enable them to retain them in the primary schools, where we still need these funds to come in and the funds to really be, to ensure by December and January, these funds have gone to the ground. We have children who have been under bursary. We are wondering, some of them are Form 4s, Madam Speaker. We are wondering whether they will be sitting for their exams because most of them have not cleared their school fees. But having said that, Madam Speaker, when you look at this motion, it gives us an opportunity as Member of Parliament to look and scrutinize and be able now to look at the different funds that we have, the National Government Constituency Development Fund, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, the Senate Oversight Fund, Madam Speaker, and the Economic Stimulus Empowerment Fund. Having been nominated in the Senate, Madam Speaker, today, as the Honorable Martha of Gilgil explained very well, that it is no longer for us to say this is a house where you will never be. If you would want to move as a woman from the National Assembly, you would go now as a senator or as a governor, Madam Speaker. And therefore, you would want to see each arm within Parliament being able to go back, oversight, look at the funds that are going, especially the funds that goes to governor. I would tell you, I have been a speaker in the county assemblies. A senator is one person who is so vulnerable, he will not even know what is happening in his or her county, because one of the things that he has never or had or been able to do is to participate fully, especially when they start their CIDP and when they come now to budgeting and be able now to implement the projects. The senator will always find the document that now the controller of budget has finalized after implementation of everything, is when you're calling your governor to question why these resources were spent or mismanaged. And therefore, the Oversight Fund is going to support them. It's not about just supporting. It's not about, it's not giving them a token, because it's like we look at these funds, even the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. I remember, Madam Speaker, how you fought, all of you, to ensure, because at one point it was just going. And so many have realized that that fund has built markets, women have been able to do trade with it, they have been able to even find themselves with grants with their merry-go-rounds. And therefore, if we are able to now ensure that we put this into the Constitution, I think first of all, we will now clear the barrier of every day being in court. Madam Speaker, the Economic Stimulus Package and Empowerment Fund is a critical fund. It is a fund that will come and support the government in many of the challenges that they are facing after post-COVID. And therefore, you remember there was a time we had a serious economic stimulus package that supported many. You will find that women in trade, youth, they will need this economic stimulus and economic empowerment fund. And therefore, even as we continue
and ensuring that at the end we will come as a team and support this motion and ensure that we pass it with the numbers that are precise and numbers that are needed. I think this House, one of the things that we must ask ourselves is even in the few months, many Kenyans are confused. I know within Dagoretti North, many have been questioning, where is CDF? Why is it that we are not seeing projects? Why is it that we are not seeing programs that are running? Why is it that they have not been sensitized, even in the new act? And I think one of the things also we have to do is let us go back and sensitize our constituencies so that they are able to understand that, one, the act has changed. Two, it is more not for the honorable member, but it is a fund now that is supporting the national government to ensure development goes within the constituencies. Yet it has been ring-fenced to ensure that we deal with security, we deal with schools, we deal with bursaries, education, and I think it is important also for the citizens to know that, because at the moment, most of them think it is the old CDF way of doing things where Mheshimiwa will pick just a committee and bring and decide how things run. I think it is important for them to know we have fund managers, and those fund managers are from the different constituencies, and you cannot have a fund manager from your own constituency. It is important also for them to know that, so that as we move forward, and we want to see each constituency, the 290, let us have fund managers from each, but they will be now reshuffled to be taken to different constituencies. But let us also have a clear regional balance so that we don't find one constituency having 10 fund managers and another one has none. Let us try and balance. And I think being a member of that committee, we'll try and look at everything and ensure also members are able to find what they need. For me, the Senate, this is an oversight fund that I'm hoping now will change the way they look at things, will change the way they will be now able to go to the ground and do public participation within what they are doing, and to also go and enlighten Kenyans to understand also the role of the Senate properly. And for us, those who are within the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, it is important also. Let us sensitize both our citizenry to understand all these funds. For me, Madam Speaker, I just want to say this is a good way forward for us, and I think as this 13th Parliament, I have seen since we started, most of the things we are trying to be very bipartisan so that we work together, so that we don't polarize so many of these things. And I'm hoping the media will not also polarize this, so that again we lose focus. And with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to support.
Thank you, Member for Dagoretti North. I now call upon Member for Kitui Central. Oh, sorry, Kitui Rural.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Also, to hear my views on this legislative proposal. But before I go on, let me first of all thank the people of Kitui Rural for re-electing me for second term to serve them. I also want to thank the members of Parliament who came to support me because my election was postponed. And also, I would like to also to thank my party leader, Dr. Stephen Kalonzo, for their support. Madam Speaker, I want to say that on the onset, I support this legislative proposal, and I want to thank Honorable Mule and Honorable Kishimo for bringing forward this motion so that we can be able to anchor NCDF, GAF, Economic Stimulus and Empowerment Fund, and Senate Oversight Fund for monitoring. Madam Speaker, the importance of CDF cannot be understated. And anybody who is trying to belittle CDF or to scrap CDF is an enemy of this country, is an enemy of the people who have been elected and sitting in this August House. And I assure you, without CDF, most of us will not have come back to this parliament. And without CDF, most of us will not come back, I assure you. Because what are you going to tell people you have done for them after 5 years? CDF is the only fund which can be seen on the ground. It's the only fund which supports the low-income people. CDF has been able to do a lot in terms of school infrastructure, building new schools, classrooms, dormitories, dining halls, and innovation of schools. I'll tell you where I come from, because the poverty levels in Kitui County is quite high. Before CDF, the classrooms, the schools, especially the primary schools, were constructed using mud. But now when you go to the schools, now you find them that now the schools are constructed using blocks. Now that is a very good thing, because a good school, if a good school is good, then you expect good grades. CDF has been able to give bursaries and scholarships to many schools, to many students. As we speak now, many students are at home because their parents cannot be able to afford school fees. I'm very sure most of us, the members of parliament, cannot even sleep in our homes because parents are looking for us from left, right, center, so that we can be able to give them money. And again, you know very well that we don't have that kind of money to fund, to give school fees. CDF has been used to construct chief's offices and police stations, which is very important for security of our people. Madam Speaker, these funds, when they are being used to construct schools, we use local people to construct. We use local business people to do their works. Therefore, when they are doing this work, CDF is supporting the local economy because these people have something to do, they are employing people, and people are getting incomes. When it comes to GAF, but before I go to the GAF, we need to increase CDF because I assume if I get double what I was getting, we are going to do a lot more than we have been doing. GAF, understand GAF, the women representatives, they are given only 7 million per constituency, which to me is too little. So even this fund needs to be increased so that at least the impact of the fund can be able to be seen. Senate Oversight Fund. This is an issue which has been long discussed. And you know, at times, this parliament, we are also enemy of ourselves. I remember this proposal came to this parliament, and it was ignored. The work of the Senate, the senators to oversight the counties is very important. If you look at the misuse of funds by the counties, is too high. In fact, there are some counties which have got so many billions, but they cannot even show anything which has been done with the funds. So we need to give the counties, the Senate, the oversight funds so that they can be able to do their monitoring and evaluation of what is happening in the counties. Madam Speaker, I have a small problem with the economic stimulus, but I don't have a problem with empowerment fund. Because empowerment fund is going to cater for women empowerment, men empowerment, youth empowerment, and also persons living with disability. But the definition of economic stimulus does not fit into this. Because economic economic stimulus is an action by the government to encourage private sector economic activity by engaging in targeted expansionary monetary and fiscal policy. And this action is taken during recession. Recession is when the economy is not working, to help jumpstart the economy and enhance growth, economic growth and create jobs. And Madam Speaker, the first stimulus program was done in 2010, is when we had the first economic program. And that one was very successful because the economy grew by 8%, which was the largest growth in the history of Kenya. 22 billion shillings were used to construct schools, horticultural markets, Juakali sheds,